Hola, bellezas. Thank you so much for joining me in this amazing Latina Leadership Summit, where we are illuminated Latinas breaking barriers while healing our past wounds to live a full life of prosperity. We thrive here. We encourage living a healthy lifestyle, but also being very, very wealthy because we want to be generous to our communities and to our families back home, because we're all about bringing them along with us in our journeys to success. I'm Shazzy, your host. You might know me from the Latina Gringas podcast, and today I'm so excited and honored to have the amazing Juana Bordas. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Born in 1942, she embodies the essence of courageous leadership and inclusivity. As the founder of transformative initiatives like the Mi Casa Resource Center for Women and the National Hispana Leadership Institute, her work illuminates the path for others. At the helm of the Mestiza Leadership International, she champions Latina leadership, infusing it with resilience and authenticity. Juana originates in a Nicaraguan mining town. She is the first to graduate college in her family. She embarked on a profound commitment to empowerment through the Peace Corps. Juana's influence extends globally, earning her a revered place in the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame in 1997. Juana, this is amazing. You are a trailblazer, a motivational speaker, a facilitator. Juana embodies leadership suited for the multicultural age that we live in, inspiring transformative change and fostering inclusive participation. Everyone, please welcome Juana Bordas. Juana, you are such a force to be reckoned with. I wish you were my auntie. I want you to be my auntie. Oh, you are auntie. Okay, so you are officially my auntie. Welcome. How are you? And please tell us so much more about your origin story.
My handle when I work with millennials and Zs and so forth is Tia Juana. And I'll tell you why, because, first of all, we have lots of Tias, both that are our own and through blood in relationships and just because they're family friends. But, we're at a place where we have to question the hierarchy and we have to question dominance. And that's especially true for young people. They just really want to form a more collaborative world and a world where everybody's respected for who they are and so forth and so on. And so when you look at me as an elder, they don't want me telling them what to do, but they love their Tias.
Right, exactly. Don't tell me what to do, but tell me all the stories.
Which makes it more lateral. It makes it more of a collaboration and a partnership. And I really believe in my new book, The Power of Latino Leadership Ahora, I have a whole chapter on intergenerational leadership, because that's one of the hallmarks of being Latino. Whether you're at one of our parties or our family reunions, or we have all the ages there. We respect the elders, and yet we know our young people are our future. And so intergenerational leadership. And that's so important today, by the way, because 10 baby boomers retire every day. And in 7 short years, millennials and Zs will be the majority of the electorate. So we are going through an incredible paradigm shift of generations. And so I would encourage everybody to start thinking about, I have fun with Tia Juana because they love that, but just how can we have relationships with people in different generations and learn from each other? I just hand my phone to my 26-year-old grandson and say, what do I do about this?
Right, exactly.
I was Venmoing somebody yesterday, and I said, when they first came up with this, I thought, que estupidez. And now I'm like, let me Venmo.
Right? You're like, why do I have to do this? The government now has all my information. You're like, shoot, I guess I have to.
Yeah. So I believe each generation has a gift to give, just like each culture, our genders, everything. And, if God wanted everybody to be the same, we'd all be the same. But every single thing, every leaf, every tree, every flower, every person, every culture is different. And so we have to learn to respect inclusivity as the way the earth is and as the way we are all made. So I do want to talk a little bit about my origin story, because again, for young people, that's so important. They want to know, who are you? And it's a very old tradition in our culture as well. And the difference is that in a generation ago, we would have known each other's grandparents. And yet here you are from Colombia. Here I am from Nicaragua. A third of our community are immigrants. 1 out of 5 people move every year. So we no longer have intact communities. And yet that sense of community, that sense of belonging, and your sense of identity is what gives you personal power and also connection, roots. And so my story, you started a little bit on it, is that I immigrated to the United States at 3 years old. I'm the youngest in a very large Latino family. And my first memory memory is being on this banana boat. In the hull of the boat, they had one room with bunk beds. And that's how we came to this country. And I have to say, especially for those of us who work with our immigrant communities, that when I was growing up, I thought it was a quote disadvantage. I was poor, I was Latina, I was, we aren't really tall. And I came from a very large family. My mother didn't speak English. She had a 5th grade education. And yet, as I went on my journey and began to integrate my past and my identity with who I am, I realized the strength, the resiliency, the determination, the vision that my parents had for me. And that it was because of that and because of their sacrifice that I was able to become an educated person and be the first person in my family to go to college. But one thing I do want to share with Latinos is that today we're in a much different place. All these women that you're interviewing, Latinos now have an educated class. We never had that before. We never had this kind of intellectual power, this kind of economic power that we have. The numbers that we have, we accounted for half of the growth in the last century. And so I like to say, es la hora, the future is Latina. The first Latino president has been born, and I am convinced it is a Latino.
Yes, totally.
And we're at the crossroads of power. And so the kind of things that we're doing today and that we're doing to bring our community together and to really understand who we are, where we came from, and what our strengths and advantages are, because we know the Anglo system. I'm Dr. Juana Bordas, so I know the Anglo system, but yet I'm bringing something more. I'm bringing assets and advantages. And because it is the multicultural age, and because Latinos will lead the multicultural age, we really have special gifts to offer.
You're fascinating. You're just putting these words, all these thoughts that I've had in my mind in such a well-formed, articulated way. Thank you for that. Because I'm like, yes, the first Latino U.S. president has been born. They're here. Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It could be me. It could be my brother. You know what I mean? Like, we're here.
The exciting thing about that is, people don't understand the power of U.S. Latinos because we are the most economically viable group, and only Mexico has more people of Hispanic descent than Latinos. We're like 69 million strong now, and there's more people in Brazil, but that's our larger Latino family. And so when you look at Latinos and our economic power and what we have going on in the United States, I think when we do elect a Latino or a Latina president, we're going to see a unification across the hemisphere of who we are as a people. So we won't just be the leaders of the United States, we will be the leaders of the hemisphere, and that's important because we're living in the global age, we're living in the multicultural age. And so Latinos are both global and multicultural. We come from 26 countries.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's what I was going to say. It's 26 countries, all the Spanish-speaking countries.
Right. Yeah.
That's amazing. Juana, I'm going to start with a question that I love asking all of my speakers.
Yes.
This was not part of the list, but it's just like a nice little icebreaker and continuing kind of in your personal story. Could you share a personal story about yourself? What got you in this space of leadership, which you spoke to a little bit? And how do you find the energy to wake up every day and do what you do with such passion?
I do think, by the way, and I do a lot of work with people, is that you need to know your purpose. We talked a little bit about everybody being unique. And I always like to tell people, you are a one-of-a-kind design, a unique expression of the divine, So we are unique. And then so part of our journey has to be to understand. That's why I start with my background. Think of the power I have because I am an immigrant. Think of the power we have as women because we got the vote 100 years ago and we've been going through this paradigm shift where women are beginning to step into their power. Think of the power we have from being bicultural and multicultural people. And so, really understanding your personal story and who you are and what your purpose is in life, because you have a divine purpose. You really do. There's never been anybody like you. And to be able to tap into that is what gives me my energy, because I'm very clear why I'm here.
What point in your life did you realize or have that moment of clarity?
Well, I think, the thing is like when you look back on your life, the fact that I was the youngest daughter and I had 3 sisters that helped me. One of my sisters sewed my clothes. Another one, this is kind of unbelievable, and I want millennials to hear this. She was like 18 or 19 years old, got her first job, and actually saved money to get me braces so I could have this smile. I mean, an 18-year-old thinking that way about their little sister, you know what I mean?
That's what I'm talking about, the level of leadership.
The place of where you were born and what number you are in the family, and then your gifts and talents. Obviously, I'm an extrovert. I have the capacity to communicate. That was a gift I was given in order to be able to do what I do. So I think, I really started integrating this when I did join the Peace Corps, because I grew up in the 50s universities. And when I went to college, by the way, I never met another Latino. And yeah, and the University of Florida was segregated. I marched to help Black people come on. And so I think one of my gifts now as an elder is I can help people understand how far we've come. You see what I mean? Now we're the fastest growing entries into the colleges and universities. And when I was there, we didn't have anybody hardly, right? So when I joined the Peace Corps, I had grown up in a very segregated society where immigrants and my parents, I say my mother had kind of a cultural nervous breakdown, having to work in the lunchroom and work 6 days a week to help her family. And yet I know now she was a great strategic leader with a vision. But when I went in the Peace Corps and I saw how incredible Chile was, and how, like, you're from Colombia. Think of wasn't Simón Bolívar from Colombia? Yeah, I mean,
the great liberator.
Writers. I'm Nicaraguan. I like that. Ruben Diario, was from there. We've had Nobel Prizes. Pablo Neruda from Chile. So we have this incredible tradition in our culture, and yet I had never seen it. I had never seen a Latino bus driver. I had never had a Latino teacher. I had never seen a Latino. There was a little store maybe, but I had never seen a Latino. Nonetheless, a Latina businesswoman.
Right.
And so when I saw that, and this was such a gift, I was so young, I knew it was not my culture that held our people back. See, a lot of people that grew up in the U.S., because I always say to my South American friends, I say, you have to have a lot of empathy for Latinos in the U.S. because we were colonized twice, once by the Spanish and once by the Anglo-Saxons. And then they go, pobrecitos.
Exactly.
But, so we didn't know. Our early Latinos didn't know. And so we owe a great debt to our civil rights leaders, like Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, because they opened the door for us to be able to get to where we are today. And so, knowing your purpose, I mean, even the time in history when you're born, I'm born right at the time when women are beginning to make their mark. In my university, it was 2 men for every woman. And now women are the majority in the university.
Right.
Now, the University of Florida is a Hispanic serving organization.
Exactly.
So I would encourage young people to have that kind of vision also. Where are we going to be in 10, 20 years? Because leaders don't lead for today. They lead for the future. And so you have to have that vision. Where am I going to be and what am I going to do? And so because I grew up with 3 sisters and my mother was so strong, and I believe our culture is very matriarchal.
Yes, it is.
El poder de la mujer is what I
Oh, man. Oh, yeah.
And because our culture is so strong, and then I was able to get educated, when I came back, I started working with women, and I worked with women in the Peace Corps. I did micro enterprise work. So all of these things kind of integrate into what is your purpose? What are you here to do? And also your purpose is organic. It grows as you serve, as you build your business, as you get more educated, as you expand your network, it grows and you have a bigger impact and more influence.
Wow, Juana, you're just such a powerhouse. I just feel so blessed and so honored to have met you.
I like to work with young people because you're the future. As Latina, but you're the future. And building these partnerships with young people just gives me such joy because I know where they're going. They don't know where they're going as much as I do, because I can see the future, right? And so it's so exciting to be Latino today because we really are at the crossroads of power.
We really are. And we need to share what you're saying right now, because at times it's so easy to get bogged down with what's going on in the news, the narratives that are told about Latinos. And then sometimes we're like, we have to remember how far we've come, and we're not going to stop, because if there's something that Latinos know is to trail forward, is to keep moving forward, and we will not stop. And I don't know any single Latino in my life that I've met that has not made significant progress in their life and changing their generation and like their family's generation, with just the sheer passion that they have in their belly and like the fire that they have in their belly.
Exactly.
So I love hearing what you're saying, because I can't watch the news these days because it just depresses me. I need to hear the good news, and the good news is look at how far we've come and just imagine how much further we're going to go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I love that.
And
all right. Yes.
We're reaching critical mass. When I teach leadership, one of my principles of leadership is leadership by the many, or collaboration, which is, you talked about it. And this is certainly an example of Latina collaboration. And so one of the reasons Latinos are going to be so influential is because we're so inclusive. We have that bienvenido spirit, and we want everybody to come with us. Like you said, we're not here just for ourselves. We're here to lift up and to bring other people with us. And so this whole concept of leadership by the many, or collaborative leadership, participatory leadership, is that we as leaders have to find that leadership in everybody and help bring them along, and to understand that everybody has a contribution to make, whether it's keeping your office nice or helping you with IT, or like what you're doing with marketing and helping other Latinas. That's your gift. And so as we collaborate together and bring everybody into the leadership paradigm, we're going to have the critical mass to influence the mainstream, which is what I think Latinos really should be thinking about, is how do we bring our values of generosity and cooperation and taking care of people and inclusiveness and, the bienvenido spirit and the hard work, because we love to work because we know that's the way we can contribute. And how do we bring these values into the mainstream? And I might say real family values, because that's what Latinos have. I can be too fond of the kids because our families are everybody in a sense, we bring people in.
Yes, we do. We're very inclusive.
We're inclusive.
We're inclusive. Exactly. And it's just like, it's because it's that love, that passion, and it's that wanting to see people luchar and have that spirit of siempre luchar y siempre mirar para el futuro y ser fuerte. It's all that kind of stuff that when I see that spirit in women like yourself and other Latinas, I just embrace that, because I'm like, that is to me the definition of what it is to be Latina, is that spirit of inclusivity and love and that fire in our bellies that we have that just keep us pushing forward.
I mean, I know that there's, that we're talking the ideal. And by the way, when I wrote my books on leadership, I had to say, look, I'm talking about the Latino ideal. Yes. Because when I read leadership books, whether it's Good to Great, or all these books, In Search of Excellence, they talk about the culture, the Anglo culture and Anglo leadership from its highest form. And that we have to have as Latinos, that vision of this is who we are as a people. And we want to hold on to the best of our culture that has brought us through 5 years of colonization and being deemed minorities and not even having an identity till 1970s, which is like, it wasn't that long ago.
You said until 1970 in terms of being like Latinos in the U.S. Is that where
that's the first time Latinos were declared a minority in the U.S. Like when I filled out my first census, there was nothing there. It was either black or white. And we weren't on the census till 1980. I mean, that's 40 years ago, right? And so you see this whole emergence. I mean, people want to know why Latinos are struggling with their identity. Well, first of all, we come from 26 countries. We respect diversity. So we're not going to say lockstep, we all got to do this. That would be against our values. We have a very open door. But the other thing is, with only 40 years of identity in this country, we're still in the identity formation stage. And so this whole idea of welcoming the other cultures and understanding that, like a Latina will come up to me and say, well, I'm only half Latina. Like my daughter is Carmen O'Connor. I call her a leprechauno. And I say, okay, which half?
Right.
Because it's not like that.
It's not like that.
If you have a Latino mother or father, you can be all Latino and you can be all, that's one thing the millennials are showing us about identity. They're into intersectionality and having an identity. I mean, human beings are very complex. And you can be so many things. And as we grow, we can embrace more of ourselves. And as we do that, we can embrace others, The Latinos have an incredible gift to give to America. And I believe it's our love of inclusiveness and it's our humanistic values. We care about people. And
Juana, I just got
that does not care about people and their youth. And yet for us, you even started your podcast talking about generosity. For us to be generous is more important than to have more. We're taught not to take more than our share. And that doesn't mean you can't live in a beautiful house or take your vacation to Costa Rica or go to Nicaragua, but you just don't get so wealthy that you damage others.
That's exactly it. We don't want to become damaged because ourselves or damage others. And that's why, like, I was taught, like, my mom was an immigrant. Both my parents were immigrants. My father passed away, but like my mom, she just received her citizenship just a few years ago.
Yeah.
She was able to travel outside the country with a passport. Like, that was such a big deal for her to know that she could come back in and not worry about getting stuck in immigration or getting deported. I mean, such a big thing. And like my youngest childhood memories, and what I appreciate about my mom so much is whenever I outgrew clothing, when I was so sad, I'm like, oh, I outgrew that cute little romper or jumper or whatever, because I'm getting taller now. She would clean everything, fold everything, and put it in a package. Why? To send it to my little younger cousins in Colombia or Venezuela.
Of course.
And then the family, they would receive the clothing, and then they would take photos with it and send it back to us. Yeah. And it was like this circular kind of like generosity that it's just like, and of course I'm heartbroken because I'm a kid and I'm like, I don't want to let go of this dress. And my mom would say to me,
Your mom was teaching you the value.
My mom was teaching me the value that I have. Exactly. That like, no, we have to help the others. We have to help our little cousins, your little cousin, they need clothing. They don't have the privilege that we now do for living in this country, that we can go to Kmart and go shopping all the time. They don't have that privilege. And then also the thing that I learned is that the Latinos, they don't throw anything away. I would go to Colombia to visit my grandmother.
We also do more with less. We
do more than less.
And
so resourceful.
One of the things I want people to get from my talking with them or sharing with them is that these are leadership traits. States.
Yes.
You have to understand that a generous leader cares about its people, knows about their people, takes time for their people, doesn't, like when I was at Mikasa, because I was the executive director, didn't mean I got a big raise and nobody else did. It was shared across the staff. And so that's such an important value. I did want to kind of welcome or invite Latinas to look at some of the dichos and things they grew up with, because what you're talking about there is our resourcefulness and our sharing. And if you look at the dichos, otra taza de agua en la sopa, you can always put another cup of water in the soup. And by the way, if it's pozole, you put it in and the pozole gets bigger. That whole idea that we're going to have enough to go around, or donde come uno, come dos, that if I'm eating and you come and you don't have anything to eat, I would rather share what I have than eat it all myself, So there's this sense of generosity and sharing. And it's such an important leadership trait to not only be resourceful, but to be generous and to think about the well-being of others as you move forward.
So these are leadership skills, but some of that we learned because we came from poorer countries. You had to become resourceful, but those things is what created such great Latino leaders.
Right. And it is those skills. When they talk about leadership, they say leadership because we have such an educated workforce and because there's so much complexity and nobody has the solution to the problems that we face, that leadership has to be collaborative and participatory and democratic and all that. That's what we were doing. We were sharing, we were participating. So Latinos, when I say Latinos have a cutting edge, it's because our leadership is very much suited to these times as well, because we need it. Yeah. Because we are authentic participatory leaders.
We are. And I love that you identified the fact that we are having an identity crisis as Latinos. And now when you speak to that, you're talking about Latinos in this country, right?
I'm talking about U.S. Latinos.
Because I feel that, but you're the first person that I've actually heard articulate that, because I feel that fully. And a lot of the women that I've been interviewing also feel that, because we're born here. Our parents are from other countries.
Right.
But when we're here, we're viewed as Latino or Latina. Go back to our countries of native origin where our parents are from. We're not received as such. We're seen as the gringas or the gringos. You know what I mean? Like, we're not fully this. So what would be your advice, or what what words of wisdom do you have in terms of for those of us that are experiencing that right now, and how to, because my purpose here is trying to create a sense of community for Latinas here in the USA, and then we'll expand globally. But for those of us that are having this kind of identity crisis, what words of wisdom do you have for us to move forward in our power?
This is a real important point because, America has gone through this whole thing about racial reconciliation and identity and diversity and all of that. And yet Latinos are not a race. We represent all the races. We've been called the cosmic race, La Raza Cósmica. That was written over 100 years ago by José Valenzuela, who was a Mexican philosopher and teacher and politician. And so we represent all the races, and when you look at studies on Latinos, a third of us are Afro-Latinos, where a fourth of us are indigenous, and we have that indigenous background. 40% of us say we're European from the Spanish, and I have French blood as well from my father, who was a French Nicaraguan. And so we're a culture, not a race. And so in my writing, and I'll hold up my book for you guys, I talk a lot about our culture and the values that hold us together. Like, to me, the Latino golden rule is mi casa su casa. That's our golden rule. What I have is yours. We share. We have that sense of collectivity. And when you were talking about your family, it's because we value mutuality. And we're living in a culture where it's numero uno more, right? And Latinos have, when I train Latinos in corporate America, we tend to give it away. We tend not to toot our own horns. We tend to be so collaborative, forgetting that in a dominant culture system that values the individual, you got to do both. And when I train Latinas, I say, look, you don't have to get all egotistical about it. What I do for my community. And if I have to stand up in front of, a large corporation with the CEO and everything, I'm going to do it with pride, with knowledge. I'm going to be prepared because I'm representing my people. I'm representing my culture. It's not about me. I've won some international awards. When I won the International Leadership Association Award for my lifetime achievement, I had every Latina in the audience come up and stand with me, because this is not about me. It's not about you. Yes, we want to be successful so that we can help others be successful, and so that we can uplift our community. So it's a win-win. It's not an either or, but we have to understand that we do work in a culture that is more focused on the I. So in order to really have unity, we need to know our culture. And so I have my book really starts with our history as a mixed people and where we came from with Spain and that. And then what is our culture? And how does our leadership grow out of mi casa su casa? How does our leadership grow out of tener respeto? Mira, Mexican American, they also say, ¿cómo puede servirle? How does our leadership grow out of our desire to serve others as well as to empower ourselves, right? How does our leadership grow? When you have a collaborative culture, you got to keep your word. Otherwise, the fabric falls apart. So we are very good. It used to be hombre de palabra. I say mujer de palabra. We got to keep our word. And so all of these things bring together a culture that is collaborative, collective, and looks at the benefit of the we. We're a we culture, not an I culture. See, and millennials are a we culture. I mean, this is all very great to me because I see a synchronicity happening and an integration happen. So learning about our culture is really important. One of the things I want to promote is I have, for the last like 30 or 40 years, I don't know if you know this, but African Americans have had a national anthem for years. I'm sitting there doing a presentation for the National Urban League and they say, let's stand and sing the African American anthem. This was about 40 years ago or 30 years ago. And it's lift every voice and sing. So I really have promoted De Colores as our national anthem. We need to do some work, De Colores, because that's who we are. De Colores,
yes.
en los campos en la primavera. So we really need to do some work about unifying our community, right? About looking at our culture, looking at our future, looking at the vision for what we're going to contribute and putting some things in place that bring us together as a people. And I think that's the work of your generation.
And that is the work of our generation. And these are the exact conversations that I'm having with all the Latinas that I'm talking about.
And it's women. And it's women.
It's women.
Connection.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is so brilliant. I cannot wait, Juana. You're going to lead a mastermind. And I just know it. We have to do it. This is like, you're so on fire. And I love so much that we're doing this. Okay, so here's another question for you. Before diving into your business successes as a leader, can you share a personal story or experience that illustrates a core value or belief you hold dear? And how does that value influence your approach in both life and in business?
Ooh, I had thought about that. Well, I'll tell you about a challenge I had that really got me thinking and moving in a different direction. And it also, I think, shows how you have to build partnerships with people across all sectors, ages, genders. So I had the honor of becoming the first trainer, the first faculty member at the Center for Creative Leadership. And believe it or not, I was 50 years old, which seems kind of young to me now. But right. I had an illustrious career. I had started the National Hispano Leadership Institute that trained Latinas for national leadership. And one of our partners was the Center for Creative Leadership, because you need to know mainstream leadership. And they're the top corporate training center in the world. So I go there, and I also had the honor at that time of becoming a Kellogg Leadership Scholar kind of deal. So that was the first time I was working with white males, because I had spent my time
And at 50 years old, in your 50s.
At the National Hispano Leadership Institute. And I knew leadership because I had been leading a National Leadership Institute, but I hadn't really studied with white males. And it was like getting a PhD in leadership. Well, I began arguing with them because I say, wait a minute, Latino leadership is not like that. We're generous, we're communal, the things we've been talking about. And so finally, especially the leadership scholars, and if people know leadership, there were people like James McGregor Burns there who coined the term transformational leadership, and Bernie Bass, that was a transactional leadership person. They stopped me and they said, Juana, if you want to promote this kind of leadership, you need to write. They said in our culture, if you don't write it, if you don't have a model, if you don't have documented, it doesn't exist. So we come from the oral tradition, and here I am, and so that was the challenge for me. How do I become an author? How do I take what I know? Because it's a very Anglo thing. Plus, for an activist, for a person like me, it took me 7 years to write my first book, which, by the way, is Salsa, Soul, and Spirit, Leadership for a Multicultural Age. There was never a book on how Black Latinos and American Indians lead, because we're just getting our intellectual class together. Now there are a lot of books because it's been, like 15 years or so. But so that was a big challenge for me. I had to totally switch to become an author, to become a researcher, to interview people, to put a model together. And like I said, it took me 7 years. Now, I didn't stop my career, but I would go on writing retreats. I had to take writing lessons. And when I talk about your purpose expanding, some of you will become writers. See, some of you, I went from leading organizations to becoming a trainer and a teacher and a thought leader and a writer, and so your purpose grows as you do that. So it was an incredible thing for me. But what I want to say, it was white males that were enlightened and that cared, that encouraged me to write. They just said, you got to write, Juana, you got to write. And so we need to find our allies and people that support us. It's not about color. not about race. I have a whole thing in my writing about Latinos by corazón, because we all know your husband, people in our families, we have such, I call it a seductive culture. Knows, how could they not love us? We love great food. We love people. We're energetic. We love to dance. We're smart. We're resourceful. And so I have this whole thing about becoming a Latino by corazón, because I think that is so important, to invite people to the party.
Yes, I love that. My husband's definitely a Latino by corazón. I always tell him Latino by food. Like,
so everybody wants to be at our fiesta, right? We invented that word. And in leadership, one of my principles is gozar la vida. That, I do dance in my leadership programs. People sing, people interact. We try to create community, because that's also our stronghold. Latinos are community builders. And so we're bringing that to leadership: passion, fiesta, celebration. And so we need to have a good time, because that's how we made it for 500 years, because we celebrate.
That is how we made it.
Worked hard, but we celebrate.
Wow. Okay, so let's go a little bit deeper here. Okay, so reflecting on your journey as a leader, what were some of the biggest personal and emotional challenges you faced along the way, and how did you navigate those moments of self-doubt or uncertainty?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I thought about it since you asked me. So I was invited to be part of the State Chamber of Commerce in Colorado, where I live, for their strategic planning event. And one of the leaders, people might know, it was Bill Coors from the Coors Company. He was one of the the chairs. And the other one was the head of United Bank, which was here in Denver at the time. And there was one Black person and another Latina and one woman. Other than the rest were these rich men. Well, I'm saying rich men because they own businesses and stuff. And at that time, I was leading the National Latino Leadership Institute, so they wanted me on this thing. Well, you can imagine the fear I had to walk in that room.
Yeah. And what year was this?
I am walking into the halls of power, and I have studied now the rules of power. And so I'm standing outside the door to walk into my first meeting, and I take a deep breath. And I would encourage people to do this. I do this sometimes when I'm going to speak to a large group. I took a couple of really deep breaths to get centered, and I called upon the power of my ancestors. Those who had brought me to this moment, those who had sacrificed and raised me and groomed me and supported me so that I could walk through that door. And so then I get this message that says, Juana, for you to be standing at this door, walking in to see Bill Coors, who wasn't just born with a silver spoon in his mouth, he was born with a Coors beer in his hand. You got it going on.
Yes.
So you have to understand that when we walk into the halls of power, when you walk into the halls of power, when you go in to sit down at a table with people that have had white privilege or whose parents went to Ivy League schools, and Ivy League schools, by the way, are still accepting a majority of people whose parents went there. For us to be there, we deserve that seat. Nobody gave it to us. And we deserve it because of our hard work, not just our own, but all the people that prepared us. And I remember one time I was giving a talk at Marquette University, and this priest came up to me and he said, I want to thank all the people that prepared you. And that was such a blessing for me, because if all of us have that sense of gratitude, which is a Latino value, gracias. And gracias is important because it breaks the materialistic paradigm, the consumer paradigm, the capitalist paradigm. If you can say thank you instead of I want more, you're going to be happy.
Yeah.
If you can say gracias a Dios, which came out of my mother's mouth every 5 minutes.
Exactly.
You're going to be grateful. So I think that was such a challenge for me, because I was going, and every time we go to the next level, you get a promotion, you get a new client, you have to meet with a CEO. We have to realize we have to tap into that power that comes not only from what we've accomplished, but from the ancestors who brought us to where we are. And that's why I do Dia de los Muertos, by the way, because that connection to your past is so important. And people are looking for that. Dia de los Muertos is going to be one of the gifts we give to America. It's going to be one of the most celebrated holidays, because everybody wants that sense of identity. Where did I come from? Who are my antepasados?
Yeah, that is so beautiful. And I love that you say that, because that's one of the things that I do. So I'm a yoga instructor, and sometimes I'll walk into a yoga studio and there's like 50, 60 people that are ready to take my instructions.
Exactly.
I might know one or two people, and the rest of them are people that are putting their trust in me to give them a beautiful healing experience. And every time, it doesn't matter. I've been doing this for 7 years. Every time I just get that feeling in my stomach of like, oh my God, I'm going to throw up.
No,
I have to step in. And before I walk in, I always come back into gratitude for being able to be in this position to guide people that I don't know into a healing practice so they can walk out and continue to heal others, right? It's just like, I help them with this. They're healing themselves. I'm just guiding them. I'm not healing them, but I'm guiding them in their healing so that they can
heal
go back.
Themselves, actually.
They heal themselves.
Facilitator,
I'm the facilitator, and then they can go out into their communities and continue to share that healing vibe, if you would, because they're in themselves are healing. So it's one of those things where I always call upon my ancestors and I'm like, thank you so much for giving me the position. But it always comes from a place of like humility that I have this power, that I can do this for people. And I feel that every time. I feel that every time I walk in the room.
A wonderful point, because when I work with women on their self-image and so forth, you know, Tony Robbins is the highest paid motivational speaker in the country, and he gets up every day and says, I'm going to win this one. And I think sometimes we think, you know, somebody gives you the bendición and you're healed. No, it's a continuous process. And it's a continuous process because we probably need to talk about, like I do yoga. I went to yoga on Monday, that women have to, and this has been a transition because my mother didn't have hobbies. She didn't have time to go do yoga. And so Latinos or Latinas are in the place now where we need to learn to take care of ourselves by doing yoga, by doing meditation. I do a lot of strength work, and by eating right, you know, because if you don't prepare yourself for leadership every day, you really can't do it. And so giving ourselves that nurturing and understanding. Every time I get up to speak, I feel like you know, and sometimes I go like, why are they asking me to speak? You know?
Right.
I mean, I think it's a continuous process of evolution, but also, you know, getting rid of some of those negative messages that we had as a child. I was going to tell you one of the challenges I had, which I think is really funny, is that when I walked into my first school, I didn't know English. And this is way in the springtime, the nuns, because I went to a Catholic school, my mother worked in this Catholic lunchroom so we could go to the Catholic school. The nun was talking about Ash Wednesday. And apparently my English was so bad that I thought they were going to brand me with a cross. I go home, and I must have been a really good actress. I go pretend I'm sick. But can you imagine a child walking into a school and not having, I mean, we get disoriented. And so when we look back at everything we've overcome, which is another thing, and we begin to heal ourselves, like you say, we understand that all of these experiences produced our power, our resiliency, our strength, our ability to overcome, you know, our ability to do more with less. And also, I think it gives us a sense of compassion for others.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does. It's so interesting, like with my husband, you know, he's Anglo-Saxon. And it's so funny when we first met, you know, some of his family members were going through some issues and they needed a place to stay. And I said, stay with us.
Yeah.
They can stay with us. And he's like, really? I was like, it's your family. It's my family. Of course you can stay with us. Our casa, su casa. Like, hello. We've had a few of those situations come up, you know, as some people are in transition and stuff like that. And I just love that he looked at me and he's like, really, that's okay with you? I'm like, why wouldn't it be okay?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't it be okay? And I just love that I'm able to hold that spirit of who we are as a people and share it with everybody. And it's just like, because I don't know anything different. And it's my way of also healing.
Yeah.
Me helping other people out.
These are the things we have to, because, you know, America has a lot of issues today. We have to infuse these values into the mainstream. And by the way, we need to learn to start talking about them. You know,
well, that's why I'm doing this, because I want to talk about it.
Your boss wants you to do something because we say yes, you know, and get taken advantage of, especially in corporate America. You go like, well, of course, Latinos love to work. And it's not only that we love to work, but we got passion and ganas. So I'm going to do this really well because that's who we are.
I love that. Oh my God, I'm going to coin that.
You're going to bring some, you know, some pancitos for everybody to enjoy. Oh, Latinos love cafecitos. We love to share food and we're generous people. And this is how we build a sense of belonging and community. Bienvenidos. I mean, Juana. We got to talk it because we haven't been taught that. If you look at the African American community, now Caribbeans are more assertive, and I come from the Caribbean coast from Nicaragua, so I have that. The Cubans have it, the Puerto Ricans have it, the Dominicans have it, Colombians have it too, because you have that whole Caribbean coast. But if you look at our Mexican brothers and sisters and some of the other cultures that are more indigenous, they're not taught to promote themselves. They're taught to be humble, and that's right. I mean, we don't want to make ourselves more than we are, but we we do want to talk and let people know how we contribute. We do want to promote our culture, so that people can start, because Latinos are still not on, when they use the word BIPOC, for example, I get very upset because it doesn't include Latinos. It's Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and we make up more people than the Black and Indigenous combined. And so we're not on the marquee. We do not exercise the kind of power we can. And part of that is because we're not assertive enough and we're not unified enough, and we need to start speaking, and we got to talk our talk.
Right.
About who we are, how we contribute, what our future is going to be.
We need to be trained on that, Juana, because you're the first person I'm talking to that's actually identifying it and saying it the way it is.
Yeah.
And I think that women, my generation,
communication.
Yes.
I do a webinar, check with the women, because it's really, we really need to learn to communicate our culture, but also to communicate in a powerful and impactful way.
Okay, I'm going to follow up on you with this because I know this is something that's needed with all the women that I've talked to so far.
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. All right. Our last question.
When I ran the Casa Women's Center, every woman had to take an assertiveness training program. That was part of our thing, to empower women to learn to be assertive. Now, that was way back, and I think women are much more assertive, especially this generation. But it's the whole idea of asking for what you want, knowing your worth, learning how to negotiate, come back around, all of that stuff, and having contingency planning. I say Latinos don't have contingency planning because we just had to do with what we had. But you got to have plan B. You got to come back, all of that kind of stuff.
Juana, unbelievable. You are such a gold mine of just like so much knowledge. All right. Our last question, what legacy do you hope to leave through your work and accomplishments as a Latina leader? And how do you envision your impact extending beyond your own success to inspire and uplift future generations?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question. Well, it's about the people you've touched and the people that you've grown. And so when I ran the National Hispano Leadership Institute, through the process of that institution, 800 Latinas were trained for leadership. And then in Colorado, as a gift to my state, I did the Circle of Latina Leadership. Women were trained for leadership. And when I say trained for leadership, my programs are 9 months. It really is a leadership development process. And so I hope that my legacy will be that the younger generation steps into their leadership power and steps into it in such a way that they bring their past, their culture, their ancestry, and their power with them, not assimilating like I had to do at the early part of my life, but not even acculturating, but bringing the Latino advantage forward, and that we will be part of the force that heals the planet.
That is so beautiful. Juana, you make me want to cry like tears of joy and like happiness. Like I see you and I'm just like, everyone needs to know who you are and everyone needs to learn from you, Juana.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Because the more that we do,
need a
more of my
person though, because I just agreed to go to a school an hour and a half from there now to go talk to immigrant parents, But I was going to tell you that if you look on the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame website, there is a documentary on my life called The Voice and Vision of Latino Leadership. So for those people that want to know a little bit more about my background and my teaching and what I've accomplished, they can check in on that.
I'll make sure to include the link.
I also want to offer them a gift that's fun, especially for your non-Latino friends. It's called the Latino IQ test. And it asks you questions about our community, and the last part of it is kind of for millennials because it gives you 10 of our stars. Because, you got to remember Bad Bunny refused to sing in English and became the #1 pop star. And his message is, he was on the cover of Time magazine and he said in Spanish, no voy a hacer nada más para que tú me gusta. I'm not going to do anything else for you to like me. And I think Latinos need to know that. It's time for us to speak in Spanish when we need to speak in Spanish. It's time for us to move our culture forward. It's time for us to say, no, wait a minute, we're here to make a contribution. And so anyway, I would invite them to look at that if they would like to, and to give people the Hispanic IQ test and have fun with it. And so you have 10 celebrities to match, like Bad Bunny's from Puerto Rico, where did they come from and who are they? So it's a fun.
Beautiful. So we'll include that in the email, the thank you email for everyone that's listened in. And where can we find you? What is your Instagram handle? How else can people find you and support you? Oh, no worries.
I am on TikTok. I am on Instagram. I am on LinkedIn. Most of them are just Juana Bordas, or I still have a website about my business, but because I'm an author, I have to promote my name. So if you look at Juana Bordas online and you look at my website, it has all the handles and everything on it.
Perfect.
And I would
Perfect.
love for you all to follow me, especially I'm trying to build that idea, like you said, so that more people know about our work.
Absolutely.
And thank
Yes, I'll make sure
you
to
for
include that.
doing this and for
Oh,
your beauty
oh,
and your
Juana.
grace and for your vision.
Thank you so much. It's been a beautiful journey. And I think I shared it with you a little bit before. I climbed up the corporate ladder, and as a Latina, I felt it was very lonely. It was very lonely. And I wish I had known you when I was still there, because I feel like I would have had way more like, this is how I'm going to walk into that boardroom and this is how I'm going to show up. And you know what I mean? But there's going to be opportunities for that in other ways, and I heard a calling that it was like, take the gifts that you have, all the skills, the hard skills that you have learned in your career, and apply them to the people that you love.
Right.
And I'm like, well, who are those people? It's like, it's the Latino people, because those are the people that I love,
Exactly.
So I love everybody. But it's like, I gotta get started somewhere first. You know what I mean? So it's like, let me help
Latinos,
my
we should
people.
not, a lot of times we're so inclusive, we tend to integrate. We can't integrate until we know who we are, because that way we'll bring our gifts in. And a lot of times Latinos say, oh, I'm just going to be part. No, know who you are and bring that forward as you integrate into corporate America or into education or whatever field you choose.
And I didn't do that.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I had assimilated, as you said, because my father, in order for us to assimilate easier into this country, my first name is Sharon. So he's like, your name's going to be Sharon. My mom wanted to call me Paola or Francesca or, something more Latino, right? But my father, he's like, no, the kids are going to be born in the U.S. We're born in Miami, Florida. My father. We had to do that. And so much of my identity, went to high school and college in Chicago and then to San Francisco.
Says we don't have to do that anymore. No, boy, I said not.
No more. No más. Pa'l carajo todo eso. Exactly. And now I feel like I'm in a place with so much like wisdom of my own at my age. I know who I am. I know my heart, and I'm going to bring my Latina giftness, my gift into the world and lead with that, because that's where my heart's calling is.
Music to my heart. And bless all the women that will be listening and working with us, and wish them so much success and just to remember that you're beautiful.
Thank you. Yes, we are all so beautiful. Yeah. Juana, we're going to be doing something. We're going to be doing more projects in the future. I just know. Fabulous, I feel it in my heart.
Because you can tell and I don't. That's why God made you and God made me. Anyway, gracias. By the way, the next book is going to be a spiritual book. So I will circle back with you about that, because Latinos, for the first time, less than half Latinos are Catholic. So it's time for us to have our own spiritual kind of opening. And so I'm working on that now.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for talking about that. Everyone, again, thank you so much for joining us for this amazing interview with the amazing Juana Bordas, who is mi nueva tía, mi tía Juana. I'm so grateful. Please follow her on all of her social handles or her social feeds, and please purchase her books. I'll make sure to include them on the links on the website so you can reference back to them. And Juana, again, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure.
Namaste, as they say in our yoga classes. Adios.
Muchas gracias. Okay, ciao.